Welcome to TNZ Talk with radio veteran Tony Trupiano and Huffington Post blogger and writer at Liberals Unite, Richard Zombeck, where they do lean left, but always talk straight.
There's something happening here. This land is your land. If it takes them to paradise, just down, down, down.
There is power in our union. You fascists
TNZTalk.com is information central for the show, including a place to make a donation, subscribe to the show, listen and get the archives, and to find your favorite player. Check us out now at TNZTalk.com.
And welcome everybody to this Monday, September 19th edition of TNZ Talk, the birth of another podcast. Joining me now is my birthing partner, Richard Zombeck, the D in TNZ. Do we need a midwife, or do you think we're going to be okay?
I don't know. I guess you're going to have to tell me.
No, sweet God. Let's just dialogue about this for a moment. Last Friday, as we were recording, I had mentioned that Donald Trump was going to do a major announcement on this birther thing. What it was a chance for him to have the media tour his new hotel in Washington, D.C., where all of the made-in-China stuff you'd ever want was found. And then he says that President Obama was absolutely, and we're going to play the audio, was absolutely born in this country. And let's just briefly listen to that audio, and then we can beat the living tar out of him.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. I finished it. You know what I mean. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
There, you happy? I said it.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
So here's the deal. And we'll just back up a little bit. Hillary Clinton's campaign did not start the birther movement, and there is nothing to suggest that they did, and there's no evidence or factual basis to that. That has now been proven ad nauseum. But Donald Trump and his surrogates aren't backing off that. We'll get to that in a moment. But I think that we should talk about the media reaction to what happened on Friday. And in fact, the major networks refused to go on the little tour of the hotel. And the pool reporters that did go, the pool reporters went. The photographers did not. The camera people did not. The pool reporters, of course, came back and said, okay, this is an infomercial. And sure enough, when he gave the infomercial, well, let's just say everything from the Washington Post to Jake Tapper on CNN, they're done. They're done.
Well, and I think Jake Tapper said we've been rickrolled.
Right.
And if anyone doesn't remember that, it's Rick Astley, never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, right? It was. Should we explain what rickrolling is?
Go ahead.
So there was a time in the early advent of the internet where you'd get a link or you'd be on a website and it would say, "Hey, here's a picture of Hillary Clinton naked," and you'd click on the link and it would be a video of Rick Astley singing "Never Gonna Let You Down," and that was considered being rickrolled. Basically, bait and switch.
Right, bait and switch. So, will the media really ignore this guy? Will they really be more discretionary when it comes to covering his campaign? By the way, I also want to point out that his quote-unquote press conference on Friday wasn't a press conference. He went out of his way to not answer questions from the press, who, by the way, I will let you all know, he, scaringly enough, put in the back of the room, and when they were yelling questions, he wouldn't answer them.
Well, I mean, do you think? Excuse me. Do you think this becomes? And I get into this discussion a lot, particularly with my wife, who always goes, "Why are they still doing this? Why are they still listening to him? Why don't they just ignore him?" And it's tough because it's news. Even ridiculous things he says are news, because essentially this is a guy running for the president of the United States that just said something patently false and ridiculous. And I'm sorry, but that unfortunately is news.
It is, but does it warrant? I mean, that is news. And here's the deal. Again, we'll go back to Friday. For those who didn't see the press conference, the first thing that happened in the 25 minutes is that Donald Trump had a group of veterans with him that spoke on his behalf for 25 minutes. The networks, including Fox News, broke from that because they kept waiting and waiting and waiting for this major announcement. Well, 5 minutes after they all broke, he comes on and makes his announcement that he finished it. Well, actually, he started it again, and I don't think he realizes that. Yeah, I think that the media understood 25 minutes into this major announcement that this was not what they had anticipated it would be. Now, again, you said, we referenced Jake Tapper. Joy Reid on MSNBC, who has just become, I think that she is the only, well, not the only one, but she's been the most consistent fact checker on issues, and she's not letting guests get away with their talking points.
Well, and what's interesting too is, we were talking about this. What seems to be happening, and I'm almost hesitating to say this, but it seems to be female journalists that are more willing to. So let me preface this. There's no doubt that people like Jake Tapper and a lot of the male moderators are calling out Trump and Trump surrogate lies. Actually, John King on CNN on Sunday actually not only said the word lie, which is a big word in journalism. That's a big accusation in journalism. I know we hurl that around, and people hurl that around, and you'll see it on less reputable websites. But that word is an indictment, and journalists tend to not like to use it. But John King used it on CNN. They're starting to use it in their headlines and in their I forget what they're called at the bottom of the screen.
The crawl.
The crawl. They're starting to use it in the crawl. There's another word for it, but and they're starting to use this word. However, female journalists seem to be more willing to call out the individuals when they have them in front of them. Does that make sense? So when they're talking to these people and they have them on their shows, they're more willing to call them on their BS. Whereas, we saw it with Matt Lauer. Trump said something that was patently false, and Matt Lauer didn't call him on it.
Well, and I think that for those that are listening that are thinking maybe you're suggesting that they're more pro-Hillary because they're female, which is...
I'm not.
I know you're not. And that's the point I wanted to make. I think that that's maybe where your initial hesitation was, and you're not drawing that conclusion at all, nor would
Actually,
you ever.
my hesitation was to avoid sounding like a male chauvinist pig.
Okay, well, whatever. I mean, it just so happens to be factually correct that there are more female newscasters, anchors, reporters that are calling Trump out for what he is. With that said, again, going back to Joy Reid, she has been a fierce defender of truth, of facts. And it just so happens that when she has Clinton surrogates on, they're basing their discussions on facts. If they weren't, she would call them out as well. So let's get a little taste of Joy Reid and the whole birtherism issue, and I think you'll find it quite interesting.
Should we... do you want to play the Joy Reid with Sean Jackson?
We could do that first and then play the other one, yeah.
Yeah, let's play her with Sean Jackson, who is a Trump surrogate, an African American Trump surrogate, which is important, and you'll see why.
And joining me now are NBC's Katie Tur, Sean P. Jackson, chairman of the Black Republican Caucus of Florida, and MSNBC contributor Teray. Thank you all for being here. And Sean, I want to start with you because you're in Florida, where Donald Trump was yesterday after he did this publicity stunt with the 7-second debirtherization of himself. Do you believe that Donald Trump would help himself, particularly with African Americans, if he now simply apologized to the President of the United States for his birtherism?
Well, you know what, in all honesty, there's no need for Mr. Trump to apologize. Mr. Trump 5 years ago was a private citizen when he gave his opinion on what he felt was or was not the case as it pertained to President Obama and his birther or birth certificate or whatever you want to call it. And if you do go back to the beginning of Mrs. Clinton's then 2008 presidential campaign, you will in fact see that Mrs. Clinton did insinuate.
When did she do that? Give us a quote or a reference to exactly specifically when Hillary Clinton ever insinuated birtherism.
Anyone can go to an article, or sorry, not an article, but a television interview and see that she
no, you can't.
Doesn't exist.
Yes, you PolitiFact
can.
looked into this. But let me go to an article. Sean, actually you can't, because PolitiFact did the work on this. They actually bothered to go back and look at interviews and look for evidence of this.
It
isn't true.
Doesn't mean it is true.
No, actually, you just can't assert things are true because you want them to be true. They actually have to be true in fact. Let me go to an article from the New York Times.
She said that she did not know if Mr. Obama was or was not a Muslim.
No, she didn't. No, that's not true. A Muslim?
Okay, well, we'll agree to disagree.
Not true. All right, no, we don't have to agree to disagree because a fact is a fact, and we don't just agree to disagree on a fact.
Joy.
You just asserted something that isn't true, Sean. I'm going to read an article from the New York Times, July 2nd. Facts are not unfair or fair; they're just facts.
I can't tell you, Tony, how many times I've had that exact same argument.
Well, let's, in what happens a little later on in that interview, I happen to see it, is she says to Sean at one point, we're not going to crosstalk. And he keeps talking over her. And she said, no, listen, stop. Here's how it works. I talk, then you talk. But we're not going to crosstalk. And he wouldn't shut up, and she just finally shut him down. She said, I'll have your microphone turned off.
Yeah, she did the same thing with Boris Epstein.
Yeah.
The Russian the Russian surrogate.
He's not Russian. Let's be fair. He's a U.S. citizen.
But he's from Russian descent, right? Didn't he immigrate from Russia?
Yeah, but that's like saying you're French.
I am French.
I know. Come on, you know what I mean. Stop it. Go on.
I have French citizenship.
Okay. Well, he doesn't have Russian citizenship.
We don't. Do we know that for a fact?
We do know that.
We're talking about facts here. Let's just agree to disagree.
No, because facts are facts.
But the thing here's I have been waiting for so long to watch someone in Joy Reid's position have arguments like this, and basically have the same argument that I've been having with people. We played something with her last week or in a previous episode on syllogism. I actually cut that part out, and I'm happy to play it right now if you want. But I cut that part out, and I kept it in our bin of clips, along with Droopy the dog, Hey You Guys, and you losing it, and our Trump supporter call. I have a little secret bin of audio, and Joy Reid speaking about syllogisms is one of them that made that small collection of about a half a dozen audio that we can that is at fingertip access anytime we need it.
We'll keep that in mind.
That's how good I thought it was.
All right. Well, she went on to basically run down the whole facts on Trump's birtherism because, again, over the weekend and the Sunday shows, what's her name? Conway.
Kellyanne
Conway. Jan Brewer, Chris Christie, they all insisted and were all challenged on the idea that Trump hasn't said anything about the birtherism stuff since 2011. So Joy regales us with some facts.
Yeah, and actually she played the same Trump clip that you and I listened to, although hers is a little longer. And then this is what she had to say on basically it's a rundown of the facts on Trump's birtherism idea.
Now, you win if you've been paying attention for the last 8 years of President Obama's 2 terms in office, because you are well aware which one of those statements is the truth. Trump's other 2 statements are, quite simply, lies. Let's start with his first lie, a widely discredited talking point among Trump surrogates that birtherism originated with Hillary Clinton and her 2008 presidential campaign. In fact, the earliest reported instance of misstatement from a public figure about President Obama's origins can be traced back to 2004, after he first reached national prominence at the Democratic National Convention that year. Our very own Chris Hayes tracked down the source of that claim in a 2007 piece for The Nation. A Republican Senate candidate named Andy Martin, who announced a press conference saying he would expose then-Senator Obama for having, quote, lied to the American people and, quote, misrepresented his own heritage. You may also have heard some Trump supporters reference a secret memo that supposedly exposes the truth about the Clinton campaign's ties to birtherism. The document they're referring to, it's not a secret at all, you can actually just Google it, is this, a 2007 internal strategy memo from Clinton pollster Mark Penn, in which he writes of her opponent, quote, all of these articles about his boyhood in Indonesia and his life in Hawaii are geared towards showing his background as diverse, multicultural, and putting it in a new light. It also exposes a very strong weakness for him. His roots to basic American values and culture are at best limited, unquote. That's it. No attempt to question President Obama's citizenship or his birthplace. No smoking gun. In fact, Penn goes on to advise a strategy that highlights Clinton's middle American values and warns that the campaign is, quote, never going to say anything about Senator Obama's background, unquote. As for Trump's second claim that he finished the birther controversy, any lingering questions about the president's birthplace were answered 8 years ago by President Obama when he released his birth certificate, the first time in June of 2008, and again when he released the long-form version in April of 2011, an unprecedented act for a sitting American president. The truth is, the only controversy that Trump attempted to finish on Friday was the one that he himself created when he began leading the charge on the birther conspiracy theory in the first place.
Okay.
A rundown of the facts.
Now, it just continues to confound me. And then Trump, that is trying now to deflect the whole birtherism thing. And by the way, just saying, I finished it, it's over, let's move on, let's talk about things that matter, let's make America strong and great again. It's not that simple. And I know you've been following the dialogue as well over the weekend about how offended blacks in our society are by what Donald Trump did, his lack of humility, his refusal to apologize for what he has done. And even when I was doing the interview I do every morning on the USA radio networks with Angie Austin, it was clear to me, she being a conservative, it was clear to me that she was, and I hate to say this, either uninformed or being deliberately ignorant on this issue, because she claims that she didn't understand how this was racial.
Yeah, and I do know what clip you're going to here, but what got me about this clip with Touré was that I don't know that I completely understood. I got it to a degree that it was racial, but I think I got it to a degree that I felt that it was racial because it was coming from obvious racists, right? I didn't get that someone who possibly, like, let's say you or me, that aren't necessarily racist, and I say necessarily because I never know, right? It's like I'm not completely sensitized to some of the things that I say, and I don't. We all say things that a particular person who hears it might be offended. And there's definitely some credence to the fact that people tend to be overly offended by things that they have no right to be offended by. But I don't think until I heard this, got the depth of the offense that an African American or any person of color could get from a comment like that. And he does an excellent job, Touré does an excellent job in this 2.5 minutes of explaining that. And and after listening to it, it's one of the reasons I got this clip, is it made perfect sense to me, Tony.
Well, let's take a listen.
And every other country was able to say, well, what about the way you treat blacks? And this country's like, well, we don't have an answer for that. And the election of Barack Obama was, for many people, a sort of watershed moment where finally we feel like we are fully part of the country. We are not second-class citizens. And to have this gadfly go up to the president and say, I want to see your papers, boy, was like this moment, like even a black president is still beneath any white person who wants to allege you're not really American. And to say you're not really American when an American can be almost anything is so deeply offensive. This was incredibly hurtful and painful for a lot of us that changed the election of Obama to this argument of like, well, can we prove that he's actually American? And these questions that never end, even though, I mean, people were tweeting me that they cried when Obama showed his birth certificate. Right. And it seemed like this sort of defeated moment of like, I finally have to show my papers to this fool who's been pulling racial rank for years of saying, any white person can say, I want to see your papers, boy. This is not a game. This is deeply painful and hurtful and offensive. And for Donald Trump to think he can just walk up to the mic and say, never mind, Kay, thanks, bye. Like, no. And for people like Sean to think like, this is a game where I can be like, well, no, he doesn't need to apologize because it's actually Hillary. I mean, like, is he not a man to do his own business? Like, Hillary started it, so I'm following her. When does he ever follow her with anything? Why don't you own up to what you did and the pain? I mean, like, he wasn't just talking to Obama. He was also talking to you and saying, you too, Sean, are not really American, and that you can't hear that is sort of insane.
Excuse me, sir, you are part of the ugly discourse of politics, because to sit there and blatantly say that Mr. Trump is racist because he asked for someone to show their birth certificate, let me tell you something.
Yes,
don't you dare talk about
racism.
Don't you dare talk about black America and their well-being in this country, because it was Republicans that, if we were not for the Republican Party, we would not even be free right now,
okay,
number one.
Sean, you know what? Abraham Lincoln is long dead. Let's talk about the current Republican nominee. Sean, one moment. I want to get
right now, and we have civil rights. because of Republicans. So please stop
We're
that
just
narrative.
That's interesting. Yeah, exactly. I think that the reason that African Americans have civil rights is because African Americans fought for them. Thank you very much for giving
and Republicans are the ones that passed it when Democrats continually turned it down. Let's tell the truth now. That's not true either. Let's tell the truth. It is the truth. All you have to do is go back and look at the voting records.
Google exists. History is easily accessible.
Really? Someone as educated as you use something as funny as
Katie
Google?
Tur.
Wow.
As funny as Google. I mean, they open their mouths and words just fall out of them.
Well, I posted the Christie piece on social media today, and somebody had one of the first responses to that was, "I think they're all drugged." It really does make one wonder. And again, if we talk about surrogates, it really does make one wonder how anybody, and I don't care what your political background is, can still embrace this guy. Now, you have pointed out, Professor, and I think you've done a beautiful job of doing it, that there's going to be a base of support that no matter what is said, and this is true on the Democrat side as well, no matter what is said, those followers are going nowhere. They're loyal, they're fierce, they're demanding, and that's the way they're going to be. At the end of the day, though, I posted a story as well this morning about how the Republicans are now infighting because of Donald Trump. And interestingly, some of them aren't talking to each other anymore at the congressional level. They're just, and I'm talking Republican on Republican violence, which is one of my favorite sports. It's getting worse because people want to back off from Donald Trump. Reince Priebus yesterday, I believe it was on Meet the Press, said that for the 15 candidates that were not Donald Trump, who would not honor the pledge to support him, that there would be political consequences for them. How do you like that one?
Yeah, that's beautiful. He said something else today that I was looking for while you were talking, and
that's because, as we learned on Fridays, he doesn't listen when I talk.
I do.
I'm cheesing.
I do. I listen very attentively. He also said that Hillary Clinton's campaign was definitely involved in birtherism. Definitely involved.
Yeah.
They were definitely involved.
You sound like Rain Man now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's what you were trying to do. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with all that being said, and I think that maybe this was part of Trump's effort to get rid of the birther issue, which isn't going to go away anytime soon. Thank you. You have only yourself to thank. He once again doubles down on violence against Hillary Clinton. And I'm telling you right now, I, for the life of me, do not understand that there isn't literally worldwide anger over what he said about her. And let's make, we're going to go back to facts for a moment, see? Fact number one, she is not looking to repeal the Second Amendment. Fact number two, she is not looking to take away anyone's guns. Fact number three, what she's looking for is reform legislation around gun control that would make sure that those that are not medically and mentally sound don't get them. Fact number five, she, like many millions of other Americans, doesn't believe assault rifles should be easy to get or should be attainable at all. But that doesn't stop Donald Trump from lying, now does it?
Well, why would it? I mean, he could say, listen, Hillary Clinton is planning to build a fence around Montana and put everyone who owns a gun in it, and then she's going to use chemtrails with airplanes to kill them all. And there are people who would vote for Donald Trump that would believe him. and it would be on Breitbart and all different kinds of websites that Hillary Clinton is going to round up all the gun owners and shoot them with their own guns. And there are people that would say, oh, my God, how is she? We can't let her get away with that. And you know what, Tony? You and I would be talking about it on the show.
You're right. But instead, we're talking about what is now perceived to be a threat, another threat. This would be the second one against Hillary Clinton. Now, the first one was, there's nothing we can do. Well, maybe the Second Amendment people can do something about it.
Yeah.
I think this one is much more overt. Let's take a listen.
Sure.
Now, she's very much against the Second Amendment. She wants to destroy your Second Amendment. Guns, right? I think what we should do is she goes around with armed bodyguards like you have never seen before. I think that her bodyguards should drop all weapons. They should disarm, right? I think they should disarm immediately. What do you think? Yes? Yes. Yeah. Take their guns away. She doesn't want guns. Let's see what happens to her. Take their guns away. Okay? It'd be very dangerous.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So before the show, I told you that I'm going to propose a question about polling. Donald Trump has risen quite nicely in the polls in the last couple of weeks, and in some of the battleground states, including Michigan, he has either pulled within the margin of error, pulled even, or even gone ahead. I have a couple thoughts on that, and then I'll throw it at you. Number one, I don't believe the polls. Number two, I do believe that there are Trump supporters out there that are ashamed that they are, and when they are polled, they're afraid to say so. But number three, I don't believe that polling has become more difficult. On Friday, Z, as you know, I hosted a fundraiser in the Detroit area, and I was talking to a prominent campaign manager for somebody that's running for Congress. And this person shared with me the difficulty they're having with polling. And she has been a campaign manager for a very long time, many, many cycles, and has seen the polling change radically over the years, and technology and social media, etc. She told me that their polling has become so complicated because of cell phones. There are certain rules that can't be followed or have to be followed. A lot of people don't have landlines. The vast majority of people that are being polled are 60 and older, which does not give an accurate reflection of the country and where they're at. Because we know older people vote, of course. We also know they have more of a tendency to vote Republican. For whatever reason. I think a lot of it is generational. But all that being said, I think that at the end of the day, although I don't believe the polls are as close as they're reporting, I still believe they're dangerously close to, I would hope, scare Democrats into making sure they can get out the vote. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think what's interesting in at least your comment is I agree with you that the polls are off because of everything you cited. And also, I was thinking when you said that, I hope it does scare Democrats. I hope it scares the hell out of them that the polls are so close. And, I'm sure they have a similar insight to this as you do. But I hope that's not going to make them, rest on their laurels and say, well, the polls are wrong and they're not polling everyone and we're not getting a clear picture of this. And the real clear picture of this is that we're going to be just fine. I'm at a loss right now. I agree with you on what you said. I think that the polls are skewed. I think they are hitting an older segment of the population to get these. I agree with you on the Trump attitude as to whether or not people want to admit that they would vote for him. I don't completely agree with that because I think people who support Trump are willing to say that they'll vote for him.
But see, I'm not talking about the people that support him. I'm talking about people that are Republicans that will vote Republican because it's their duty or whatever, and those aren't necessarily supporters.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you seen online or talked to people where they say, "Well, I'm going to, hold my nose and vote for Hillary."
Right.
And at least you can admit that because she's not some psycho babbling chimp. I'll go back to get out the vote once again. You and I have had this discussion. I told you when I gave my remarks at this fundraiser on Friday, I told people very simply, I'll just give you the bottom line, as I did on the phone the other day. The reason that Republicans win is because more Republicans vote than Democrats. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what this is about. It's not about the candidate. It's not about the money that was spent. It's not about any of that stuff. It's that more people of one political party votes for their candidate than the other people in their political party. I don't know why that is such a hard concept for people, but it's the truth. The reason that George W. Bush, he was anointed the first time. The second time, he was elected. And we can argue that, but he was elected. Why? Because more Republicans voted than Democrats. That's just the truth.
Right. Yeah, and we've talked about this before, that Democrats tend to be lazy.
Now, this is not a year that can happen. I had a conversation with an activist last night who called me, and she's freaking out over poll numbers, and she's freaking out over the lack of concern for Donald Trump's penchant to lie. All of the, I could bullet point all these things, things that you and I talk about on a daily basis. And the bottom line is, and one of the stark realities is something I've just said, that I believe that there is a base of support out there for Donald Trump, whether it's people that are loyal to him or people that are supporting him or people that are just Republicans. We still have a lot of single issue voters in this country on both sides of the aisle. Abortion is one of those issues. Now, Donald Trump is not necessarily as anti-abortion as most Republicans are, which is troublesome for many. The evangelical community has begun to warm up to him because, frankly, they don't have a choice. It's not very Christian of them. And I'm not being a smartass here. It is not very Christian of them to do that. There are some that have come out against him. But the vast majority have not. And so, again, it's that quiet support that concerns me, not the vocal support.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So, anyway.
Yes, sir. You are right, sir. Listen, something just came up on my news feed. That during Fox and Friends this morning, Trump called for, and I don't think this is a joke or a bombastic headline, just called for a complete ban on all immigration.
Okay.
Because of the bombing in Manhattan, or the bomb in Manhattan, we should stop letting people in this country. Completely, Tony.
Without having all the facts. And again, it goes back to is this the man you want to be president of the United States? I can only pray that that doesn't happen.
So he's going to make America great again, Tony.
Yeah, safe and great again. He's been twisting that lately. I'm sure he'll have a hat that says that soon enough. Made in China, of course. The Emmys were last night, and we're not going to talk about winners and losers, except to say there were a lot of women winners, which is a good thing. But Jimmy Kimmel, during his opening, and he's so funny. By the way, there was a bit, before we get to this, there was a bit that they did where Jimmy Kimmel calls Uber to get a ride to the Emmys. Did you see this?
I saw what you're talking about. I didn't see the Emmys.
Oh, okay. And so he gets in the car, and the driver is Jeb Bush.
Yeah.
And literally Jeb Bush. And I give Jeb a lot of credit for doing this because it was both funny and anyway. At one point, Jeb Bush says to Jimmy Kimmel, were you nominated? And he goes, well, yes, I was. And he goes, what's that feel like? I love that. I absolutely love that. Anyway, with that said, Jimmy Kimmel, who was the host of the Emmys, had a little bit of an interesting dialogue with Mark Burnett, who is the executive producer and creator of many programs, including The Voice and Celebrity or The Apprentice. So let's listen to what Jimmy Kimmel had to say last night.
People together. But television can also tear us apart. I mean, if it wasn't for television, would Donald Trump be running for president? No. He would be at home right now, quietly rubbing up against his wife Malaria while she pretends to be asleep. Many have asked, who is to blame for Donald Trump, the Donald Trump phenomenon? And I'll tell you who, because he's sitting right there. That's right, that guy. Mark Burnett, the man who brought us Celebrity Apprentice. Thanks to Mark Burnett, we don't have to watch reality shows anymore because we're living in one. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for coming all the way from England to tear us all apart with your intricate plot. It worked. You sneaky little crumpet muncher, you. Who do you have lined up to fill the spot on the Supreme Court, Miley Cyrus or CeeLo? I'm going on the record right now. He's responsible. If Donald Trump gets elected and he builds that wall, the first person we're throwing over it is Mark Burnett. The tribe has spoken. One other little piece of business. We're going to do things a little bit differently this year. We have a new rule. This year, for the first time ever, you must be present to win.
All right. Well, you know, there were lots of jabs at Trump last night. Julia Louis-Dreyfus probably did one of the better ones because she's in a show called Veep. And I've got to be honest, I've never watched it. But she said that...
It's a great show.
And I've heard nothing but great things about it. But, you know, she said, I apologize for creating the political atmosphere we have today. When we started the show, thought it was just a joke. Unfortunately, that joke ended up becoming a reality, and I just don't know how to apologize enough. It was actually a very touching speech because her father passed away on Friday. And she broke up at the end of her speech, and she said the reason it hurt so much is because the only opinion that ever really mattered was his, which was really a beautiful tribute to her dad.
Yeah, that really is.
But Trump took a lot of hits on Sunday night, deservedly so. Now, listen, as I posted this morning on social media, it's not surprising, but it sure was welcoming.
Yeah. And you were right.
And I was right.
Hey, did you watch Trump on Jimmy Fallon?
No.
So Jimmy Fallon asked Donald Trump if he could mess up his hair. And he did mess up his hair. And what Donald Trump is bald. And on the left side of his head is about 10 to 12 inches of hair that he combs over his bald spot and sprays into place.
Right, and it's synthetic hair.
Is it?
Yep, that's what I've been told.
Okay. Isn't that creepy?
You don't have a comb over if you're not bald. And I've never quite understood that. I mean, he would... Listen, Donald, let's just be honest about it. Donald Trump is not a very attractive man. And in all fairness, I don't think Hillary Clinton's that attractive as a woman, nor would she be as a man. But I'm just saying that, you know, she's certainly much more pleasing to the eye than he is. You know, John Kerry looked statesmanlike. John Edwards was actually a very handsome man.
Except for the plastic surgery.
Well, whatever. I'm just... whatever. I mean, perception's reality. So the plastic surgery doesn't matter. Botox doesn't matter. You know, Donald Trump could actually benefit from Botox. The bags under his eyes are horrendous. They don't light him properly. He doesn't evenly wear his orange makeup.
There's no proper way to light him. I mean, he looks like a freak. And I mean, have you ever... what gets me too is when he's reading off the teleprompter, it's so unnatural. It's like, and then we will go to the police department, and then he turns and goes, and believe me, this is what we are going to do. And that turn, when he goes from one teleprompter to the other, I mean, when I watch Obama, when you know he's reading off a teleprompter, but he's using it more for notes than anything else, and then you watch Donald Trump read a teleprompter speech, it is the most uncomfortable, unnatural thing to watch. This orange Oompa Loompa who can barely read, you know... anyone who says the and a, like a banana or the apple, you know that it's unnatural speech. People say and the. I mean, that's just, you know, the way it is. And
there's a show on MSNBC called what's it called? No, it'll come to me. It's on at 6:00. It also airs on Bloomberg Television. With all due respect, Mark Halperin and don't remember the other guy. Anyway, on Friday, Donnie Deutsch was sitting in for them, and he actually said Trump has become much better with the teleprompter. I totally disagree with that. With all due respect to the marketing genius of Donnie Deutsch, I don't agree with that. I think I agree with you, and he's not gotten better with the teleprompter. And in fact, when he reads from a speech from the teleprompter, I even believe him less because I know the words were written for him. There's no way he has written any one of those. And he references history and policy as if he's aware that it exists. And he's not.
Not only did he not write them, he didn't even
rehearse
do a cursory glance of what was in them. It's just like handing someone a sheet of paper and going, "Hey, quick, read this." I mean, you know, he had hours to prepare for this, and if not days, and yet it seems like he's reading it for the first time because he thinks he's that great, you know, that he doesn't have to. "I'll just hand it to me. I'll read it. I'll look perfectly natural." And you know, going back to one of your comments just now, I have a question for you. What the hell is Donnie Deutsch doing any kind of commentary on politics? Why is he even... I don't... This is something I don't get.
Well, that birth comes from Morning Joe. I think either Joe Scarborough or Mika Brzezinski had some kind of relationship with him, and I don't mean it that way. And he used to be a not oft guest. He used to be there very rarely. And I know at one point he was slightly pro-Trump. And so I think that's why he ended up where he's at today as a pundit, a political pundit, is because he did not an about face, but an honest face. He finally just said what we're all saying, which is, all right, I'm a Republican, but I just can't do this. I just can't do it. And it might have come at a time where Morning Joe needed friends. You know, how did the wheels come off the Morning Joe Donald Trump bandwagon? Because they used to have him on quite a bit. And was it Joe's op-ed, the first one in the Washington Post? You think?
Maybe.
You know, and of course Trump is a name caller, and referenced with his respect to the relationship he has with Morning Joe, he of course inferred, which has been rumored, that Joe Scarborough, who is divorced, and Mika Brzezinski, who just got divorced, have a thing going on. Now, that may or may not be true. It's funny because if you watch on Monday mornings, Joe always says to Mika, "So what'd you do this weekend?" or "How was your weekend?" Making the suggestion that they weren't together, and maybe they weren't. I don't know. I have no idea. But name-calling has become the cornerstone of the Trump universe. Robert Gates, Secretary of Defense under George W. Bush and under Barack Obama, and it's important you understand that he served one president as a Republican, one as a Democrat. Donald Trump called him a clown yesterday. A clown.
Yeah.
Robert Gates is a clown.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't agree with Donald Trump.
Well, yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Well, for this environment, sadly it does. I don't want a president that calls a prominent public figure, someone that served this country at a time of great difficulty, that not only helped with the escalation, but the de-escalation of troops in the Middle East. I don't think he's a clown.
Yeah, but Tony, I mean, he went after John McCain. He's gone after Colin Powell now. He's gone after Gates. I mean, and the thing is that, you know, we've got a lot of people apparently that look at this and go, well, yeah, they're part of the old guard. They're part of the problem. It doesn't matter that they've dedicated their entire freaking lives to public service. Screw them. And Donald Trump is saying screw him. And people are going, right on. This is what we need.
You know, if I were a member of the Trump media, one of the questions that I would ask him, and he wouldn't have an answer to it, but I'd ask it anyway, is can you name some of the people that you would consider for cabinet positions without being terribly specific? Are there some names? Because we know that the transition is already being started. Both of them have teams, and they're vetting people, and they have to do that. I mean, it's not a presumption of winning. It's a presumption of preparedness, and so appreciate that for what it is. Would it be unfair to ask that question? You know, who are you considering for this post or that post? He's probably not going to answer, nor would Hillary Clinton. But I do think that that would be helpful. One last thing before we check out today. The debate is in a week. We've got 7 days to the debate, the first debate. Some of the pundits in the media are saying that this is Trump's opportunity. He claims that it's more difficult to debate one-on-one because he can't let somebody else take the heat. I think there's some truth to that. I think there's some real truth to that. Beyond that, though, Z, How often do you have to tell this guy, listen, during the debate, you have to be careful you don't attack her? And would it matter?
I don't think it matters. I don't think he cares. I think he's going to. You could have political experts that have, and he does. I mean, political experts telling him whatever, and he's always going to think he knows more, because he's built things. I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to build a wall, Tony. I'm going to build a wall.
Well, one of the sacrifices that he's made for this country is to build beautiful buildings.
Yeah, exactly.
And employ lots of people. And by the way, they're calling his child care program that he unveiled last week with Ivanka Care.
Well, my favorite one is, what do you have any advisors? Who are you going to have helping you with these policies? My kids. My kids are going to do it.
Well, how are they going to do that and run his empire at the same time
and not talk to him about it, because he's not? We should find that audio with Donnie Jr. Talking about the blind trust. And no, trust me, we're not going to talk to my dad about the business. I mean, we're just not. We're not going to talk to him about it. We're going to be really sure to not talk. Sure, okay, yeah, all right, oh yeah, right. I mean, who even? I don't even know what planet they're on anymore.
Nor do I.
Dun dun dun.
Hey, listen, let's give the 411 one more time on TNZ Talk, please.
Yeah, let's. Go to tnztalk.com. Listen, we do need your support. We are trying to be, as Tony pointed out in a previous episode, trying to be listener-supported radio. We need the financial help to keep going with this. You can find out how to support us at tnztalk.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter. There are links to our website there. For financial donations and support, we're using Patreon. And you can find a link to that on our website. And also, you can go to iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, rate us, review us. That is also very helpful. Again, you can find all of that information on tnztalk.com. Tony?
All right. Well, folks, that's our edition of the Trump Insanity for today. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have some Hillary Clinton news. We'll have some news on the bombings in both New Jersey and New York to see if there is a connection. Of course, there was the mass stabbings in Wisconsin over the weekend as well. Whether or not this is domestic or foreign terrorism is yet to have been determined. I do understand that one arrest has been made. There's a bolo for 4 other people. And so let's just trust that the police department in New York and the surrounding states, if these people have fled, will be found. And certainly we want to make sure we continue to pray for our first responders. As for some of them, that's what they get paid, is a little respect. For Richard Zombeck, I am Tony Trupiano. And as always, we ask that you be well.
Oh yeah, can you feel it? Just over the credits, just riffing now. Words and chords. Not the poetry and the real thing, but not bad for an ad-lib. Not good, but... And it's not long enough, so just do a little bit more. And that's nearly done. That's the final credit there. That's the end.